As a black veteran, I realized I served a country that hated me. I'm a highly decorated veteran. I am at 100% VA compensation. So the VA compensates you based on your injuries or whatever is wrong with you. And it goes on a payment scale from 0 to 100. I'm at 100%, permanent and total. And I realized my country hates me because I realized my service never actually mattered. This is why it's another reason why I don't like it when black people say, oh, I'm black and LGBT, I'm black and a woman, I'm black and this and then black. All of them extra identifiers don't fucking matter. Take it for someone who worked for the government. It don't matter, bro. You want to be special because you're running away from your blackness. It don't matter, bro. You know how many medals I got? How decorated I am, and it don't matter? Let me give you a prime example of it. It don't matter. I was seeking therapy at the American Lake VA in Tacoma, Washington. I was begging for therapy because I needed it. My wife suggested that I ask for a black therapist, so I did. A VA patient advocate named Paul Vinkus, who got fired, by the way, he told me on the phone that I'm a racist just for asking for a black therapist. You got a veteran reaching out to you for PTSD therapy and treatment, and you tell them he's a racist just because he wants a therapist of his choice, and it wasn't even my decision. It was my wife. I was trying to be a good husband by listening to my wife. I recorded that phone call. I put it on TikTok. It went viral. You guys helped me get that guy fired. So you know it's true. Had a VA psychologist in South Carolina sexually harass me and say a bunch of racist shit. And they wouldn't fire this man until they caught him sleeping with a freaking white woman. That's the care that I've received as a veteran. And when I watch my battle buddies being shot down by cops, when I realize that as a veteran, I have more PTSD probably from dealing with American police and the pedophiles in this country than I did in Afghanistan, my service never mattered. And this is why no recruiter is ever going to be able to approach my son. You come to my property, you say, oh, it's illegal to stop me. That's cute. That law is only a piece of paper, but that pew-pew is immediate. I can reach for it immediately. I am the last person in my line that will serve in the military. You can bet it. Book it. Because I will never let another person in my family serve this country to be treated like a second-class citizen. That's why I don't do any labels outside of black.
So did you hear what the Trump administration did at one of America's military cemeteries in Europe, just in time for Veterans Day? Yeah, the story just broke that a display panel that had commemorated the contributions of the 1 million African Americans who fought to liberate Europe from the Nazis had been removed. It had been installed a few years ago at a visitor center at the Netherlands American Cemetery, where more than 8,000 American soldiers are buried. No explanation was offered for why the panel was removed, but once you learn what the panel talked about, the answer is obvious. The panel's text pointed out that African Americans during World War II were waging what they called a double V campaign, fighting fascism in Europe and racism in America. Racism that permeated the American military when it headed to Europe and made the lives of black soldiers very difficult, and convinced many of them to pursue civil rights when they returned to the United States. It's a story that's brilliantly chronicled in Matthew Delmont's book, Half American, the heroic story of African Americans fighting World War II at home and abroad. The visitor center also explained that the cemetery had been constructed under extremely difficult circumstances by African American soldiers in 1944. Circumstances that reflected that racism in the U.S. military. These are the kind of civil rights stories that Pete Hegseth and Trump have sought to purge from military installations, Pentagon websites, and military cemeteries. While at the same time, they renamed 9 military bases for Confederate generals who fought against the United States to preserve slavery for all time, and restored a Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery. So to summarize the Trump administration's policy regarding history, suppress the telling of African American history while elevating symbols of white supremacist history. The good news is that many people in the Netherlands, especially those who live near the cemetery, but also prominent politicians, have expressed outrage over the removal of the panel and have vowed to have it restored. Stay tuned.
The United States historically hates black veterans, and the way the first GI Bill was handled proves my point. The first GI Bill was signed by FDR in 1944, and it was meant to reintegrate World War II servicemen back into society. The bill was meant to give veterans education, job training, low-interest home loans, unemployment benefits. Southern lawmakers said, "Not so fast. You're not going to give those benefits to black veterans, are you?" These Southern lawmakers were terrified of black veterans getting benefits that would turn into a domino effect that would result in the end of Jim Crow. They advocated heavily for the GI Bill's benefits to be administered by the states and not the federal government. This gave white-ran financial institutions free rein to just deny housing loans to black people. Black veterans were completely locked out of the post-World War II housing boom. Veterans would submit their applications to universities and colleges, and admissions offices would drag their feet. Financial aid offices would drag their feet or just deny them outright with no explanation. By the time the original GI Bill ended in 1956, World War II veterans had accumulated 4.3 million home loans worth over $33 billion. And that number does not include many black veterans at all. Imagine how much generational wealth these white veterans were able to create. Imagine how much of a head start they were able to give their families. And you can draw a direct line from how black veterans were left out of the original GI Bill and the racial wealth gap that still exists in America today.
Time has passed, but it seems that nothing much has changed from the way the black average American, I use that word average because I want to draw a parallel across, the class thing, has served their nation with blood, with sweat, and debt have been treated. They have been treated less than humans. Entitlements due to black veterans have been denied them. And it didn't start from today. It started as far back as the Second World War, where black Americans fought a war that they could have chosen not to fight, but they fought for a nation who did not honor them. And so we're looking at the reactions and the response of black veterans and how they've been treated within the military systems and their hierarchies over the years. And the sad tales that they tell that no one, ever admits or ever comes to light. This video is not intended to cause racial divide, but for educational purposes and to highlight the hidden evil within the system. If you're coming across my YouTube channel, you're welcome. Feel free to hit the notification button, hit the subscription button, so that when we bring up new updates, you'll be the first to be notified. So let's dive right into the video, then we'll come back to give our own final analysis on the subject matter.
You can't tell me that Pete Hegseth isn't a white supremacist who is a disgrace to the uniform. Hegseth removed General David Chappie James' portrait from the Air Force Art Gallery and left the wall empty. Hegseth's actions continue to be despicable. We've seen how this White House has disparaged and mistreated both active duty service members and veterans who raise their hands to serve this country, especially those of color. General Daniel Chappie James Jr.'s story matters more than ever right now. James was born in segregated Florida, trained as a Tuskegee Airman, taught black pilots during World War II, flew more than 100 combat missions in Korea, flew dozens more in Vietnam, and helped lead Operation Bolo, one of the most successful air combat missions of the Vietnam War. In 1975, he became the first black 4-star general in the history of the United States Armed Forces. Nobody handed Daniel James anything. I don't want to hear anything about DEI. He earned every promotion in a military that spent much of its early career limiting opportunities for black service members. By the time he reached 4-star rank, he was commanding the aerospace defenses of the United States and Canada during the Cold War. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has repeatedly attacked diversity initiatives and questioned whether some senior officers benefited from identity-based promotions. His tenure has also conceded with the removal of diversity programs, Black History Month observance, and is also trying to delete the history of several high-profile military leaders associated with those efforts, especially the ones of color. For many black service members, the concern isn't about special treatment. It's about whether leaders like Daniel James, who broke barriers through decades of combat service and exceptional performance, would have their legacies dismissed or viewed with suspicion today.
Donald Trump is trying to erase the graves of Black, Hispanic, and women veterans at the Arlington National Cemetery. Task and Purpose reports that the website for Arlington National Cemetery has unpublished links in lists of notable graves, walking tours, and educational materials pointing to Black, Hispanic, and women veterans, as well as Medal of Honor winners. Arlington National Cemetery in Northern Virginia is our most famous national cemetery, housing 400,000 graves of U.S. service members dating back to the Civil War. It includes 2 presidents and more than 400 Medal of Honor recipients. But according to Task and Purpose, in recent weeks, the website has scrubbed dozens of pages on grave sites and education materials pertaining to the histories of prominent Black, Hispanic, and female service members buried in the cemetery, along with educational materials on dozens of Medal of Honor recipients. Cemetery officials confirmed to Task and Purpose that the pages were unpublished to meet recent orders by Donald Trump and his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who have been targeting race and gender-related language and policies in the military. They're trying to hide these graves because they're the graves of Black, Hispanic, and women heroes. You may recall that Trump recently banned the history of the Tuskegee Airmen from being taught at the Pentagon. These were a series of Black pilots from World War II who were quite the heroes. Movies were done about them. Only after the outrage did Trump bring the history back. Trump also banned mentions of the Enola Gay aircraft that dropped the bomb over Japan of World War II because it had the word gay in the name. Now we're trying to erase the graves of our military heroes.
The country isn't the way it is because of the president. We have the president we have because this country is the way it is, and I can prove it to you. My granddad fought in the Korean War back when, units were segregated to Black units and white units. And when he was home on leave in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, it was him and a few of his friends that were also on leave, and they would always go on leave together because they wanted to feel like they had some sort of safety, which obviously was a fucking pipe dream back then. And while on leave, they decided that they were going to try to have a good night, have some fun, as people do. And they went to a movie theater, a segregated movie theater. And after the movie, they wanted to go get something to eat, so they were going to walk to go get food. And while standing on a street corner, waiting to cross the street, some white cops pulled up on them and said that they were loitering and they couldn't be there. And before giving them the chance to comply, because that's some of y'all's favorite saying is, well, if you just complied, they didn't give them a chance to. And my granddad watched one of his good friends get beaten to death on a street corner, simply for existing while Black. In uniform, by the way. In the uniform that was given to them by the country that they were fighting for that clearly didn't give a fuck about them. This isn't a new thing. It's not an isolated thing for all the people who think that, oh, it's been so long since it's been bad for minorities or since it's been bad for Black people. That was pre-civil rights. That was pre-Rodney King. That was pre-Trayvon Martin. That was pre-Tamir Rice. That was pre-Alton Sterling. That was pre-Breonna Taylor. That was pre-Sandra Bland. That was pre-take your fucking pick. And now we're here. It's a domino effect. And now all these white people who finally understand what's going on because a white woman was killed. We've been telling y'all for a lot longer than the last 5, the last 10, the last 20, the last 30, the last 40 years. If we don't matter to this country, eventually neither would you. And here we are. I hate to say I told you so. For my granddad, for all the ancestors past, I hate to say we told you so. But sometimes it simply just is what it is, my boy.
Isaac Woodard was beaten so badly by South Carolina police that he was left blind for the rest of his life. And it was all because he asked to use the restroom. On February 12, 1946, United States Army Sergeant Isaac Woodard was riding a bus from Camp Gordon, Georgia, to his family in North Carolina. Isaac asked the bus driver outside of Augusta, Georgia, "Hey, can we stop and use the restroom?" The bus driver, with an attitude, stopped, and Isaac got back on the bus. No problem. Once the bus arrived in Batesburg, South Carolina, the bus driver demanded that Isaac be removed from the bus. Police were called, and Chief Linwood Scholl, along with other officers, dragged Isaac to an alley where they beat him with nightsticks. Then took him to jail, where they beat him repeatedly that night with nightsticks and blinded him in both eyes. Next morning, Isaac was taken before a judge who found him guilty and fined him $50. Eventually ended up in an army hospital in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where doctors found that both eyes were beyond repair. It took 7 months for the case to get any real traction. President Harry Truman would demand that the Department of Justice open an investigation. Scholl and a couple other officers were taken to court, but the trial was a joke. The defense attorney literally shouted racial slurs at Isaac in court and told the all-white jury that if they found Scholl guilty, then let South Carolina secede again. After 30 minutes of deliberation, Scholl was found not guilty, even though he admitted to blinding Woodard. After all this, Isaac would move to New York during the Second Great Migration. He would die in 1992 at the age of 73. He was buried with military honors in Calverton, New York.
So welcome back, guys. This is a very disheartening analysis and compilation that I have to do because I feel so emotionally connected to these men, even though I've never served in the military. And to know that you have served your nation in sweat, in blood, and even in death, the government of the land is still trying to wipe away the history, the records of colored people who have served the nations, black, Hispanians alike. This same led administration of the Donald Trump is so sad to see. And to know that you're coming back home after you've given your nation your all and you are treated the way you are treated by the local enforcement agencies, the police, is totally unacceptable and unheard of. And these people deserve better. And if I hear a black guy or a black lady saying, "I'm not going to serve," I don't blame them at all. You know, what is going to be the possible outcome of how you be treated when you look at, the histories of past black veterans? If they didn't treat them better, be rest assured that you are not going to be treated better at all. And it gives real cause for concerns. And there are people who are nursing, there are people who have lost families, lost homes. You could imagine that entitlement that is due to you is not given to you because of the color of your skin, but is given to your compatriot because he or she is white in color. I think at this moment I want to rest my case. So let's get into the comment section. I want to know what your thoughts, your opinions are concerning the subject matter. Trust to see you on my next video.